Hello class, how are you today? So last week we already talked about giving and asking information. And today in this video we will talk about recount text. So what is recount text? Recount text is a text that retell an experience or an event that happened in the past. So everything that you wrote in the recount text is already happened in the past, like yesterday, 2 weeks ago, last year, last month, and so on. How about the generic structures of recount text? So recount text has 3 generic structures. The first one is orientation. Orientation gives the readers the background information needed to understand the text, such as who was involved, where it happened, and when it happened. And the second structure is event, a series of events ordered in a chronological sequence. So it wrote by what happened first, and then what happened next, and what happens after the next event, and something like that. And the last is reorientation. It's a personal comment about the event or what happened in the end of the story. And next is the characteristics or language features of the recount text. First is recount text should using the past tense, such as the simple past tense, past continuous tense, past perfect tense, and past perfect continuous tense. Use word which link event in time, such as next, later, when, then, after, and so on. Third, should be focused on a specific participant like the writer. And fourth, using the conjunction such as then, before, after, and etc. Fifth, using an active verb like when, stayed, and so on. And the last is the passive voice may be used. For example, the bottle was filled with ink. Here I have an example of a recount text. The title is A Trip to Borobudur Temple. Last year, my friends and I visited Borobudur Temple. We went there by bus. We left our house at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It took us 17 hours to arrive there, and we arrived at 11 o'clock in the morning the next day. Along the road, we saw many vehicles, unique houses, prominent buildings, and some other tourists. After we arrived at the Borobudur Temple, one of my teachers went to buy tickets. After we waited for him for a while, we entered the Borobudur Temple area. Then we went up to the top of the temple. Borobudur Temple was built at Budur village, Magelang, Central Java by Shalendra dynasty. When we went there, people were talking in different languages. There are people who talk in Japanese and some tourists who talk in English. We have some difficulties in communication. My friend were trying to buy something, but our differences in languages made some misunderstood between us. My friend were asking for a big bag of chips, so they said, "Bu, nak kentangnya yang besar yo siko." The seller was so confused. Then the seller asked them, "What does that mean?" So they need to explain that besar mean besar or big and siko mean satu or one. It shows that misunderstood can happen anywhere. Then we continue to tour the Borobudur. Finally, after having some visit, we went to the hotel to stay and continue our study tour the next day. We felt tired that day, but we felt so happy to visit Borobudur Temple. which is well known as one of the greatest legacies Indonesia has ever had. I hope the temple can be loved by all the visitors and the government. From the text, we know that the writer mentioned about Candi Borobudur. So let me highlight it a little bit. Borobudur, also spelled Barabudur or Barabudur, massive Buddhist monument in central Java, Indonesia, 20 miles or 42 kilometers northwest of Yogyakarta. And from the recount text above, we can see that every places have different languages. Like in the story, people from other city can understand what the writer's friends talk about because they don't know what does sa and siko mean. As we can see from the text, writer's friend cannot speak Japanese, so they just use their everyday language, which is Palembang language. It also shows that there's a communication barrier between them. So they need to explain what are they talking about, and the other also need to explain what does they talk about. So that way, the seller and the buyer can understand each other what they talk about. Language itself can be a differentiator between one group and another, and it also can become an identity of the people who use the language. Like in the text, the writers and the writer's friends using Palembang language, which show people that they are from Palembang, and the other who use Japanese may be locals from Yogyakarta, and the one who use English or other languages beside Indonesia may be tourists from other country. Language barrier like that should not be a problem for anyone because every region and every city must have its own distinctive language. And not everyone can understand and speak languages from other regions or city other than their hometown regional language. That's why people choose to use Indonesian as language of communication outside the area where they live so that there is no misunderstanding in their communication. But it's okay if you want to use your mother tongue language or your regional languages to communicate with others. But one thing you need to know that you need to explain what does that mean to the others because the others may not be understand what you're talking about. If you use your traditional language or everyday language outside the area that you live, you need to know that not everyone understand your language. But to make it easier, you could have just used Indonesian or maybe English if you think that people talk English more in that area. I think that's all for the explanation about recount text, the example of the recount text, and some explanation about the story of the recount text. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this video can be useful for you in school. So see you in the next explanation video. Bye bye.